Hey, welcome to this premiere live signing of In Trump Time, a Journal of America's Plague Year. I'm delighted to be here. This book is a labor of love. Its mission is threefold. It's to make sure Tony Fauci winds up out of government and into an orange jumpsuit. I will show in this book just how he let this country down, and that led to the loss of life in this country unnecessarily. The In Trump Time book also goes after communist China for what effectively is an attack on this country with a bioweapon, and we need to get reparations from China. And towards the end of the book, we also need to get to the bottom of what happened on November 3rd and January 6th. The subtitle is interesting, a Journal of America's Plague Year. I'm one of only 3 senior White House officials who was with President Trump all the way from the 2016 campaign, where I was his top economic and trade advisor, all the way to the end of what I like to troll as his first term. And early in the administration, early in 2017, when I came in to serve the president, I was shocked that there was as many people inside the White House, inside the administration, that I would have to fight on behalf of President Trump to promote his trade and economic agenda as there were outside. That came as a real shock to me. So I started keeping a daily journal, no matter how tired I was at night. Every night I wrote down what happened. So this is not a memoir from recollection. It's actually from fact and evidence as I compiled it. And the book itself starts in the plague year, and I wanted to start there because there's just so many things that are at odds between the fiction of what you read about Trump in the media, what you've been reading about Trump in a lot of these left-wing Woodward type propaganda type trashy gossip type books that hate Trump, versus what was really going on behind the scenes in the Trump White House. And the subtitle of the book is an homage to Defoe's famous work about the plague in London several hundred years ago. The arc of the story, what I try to do in the In Trump Time book, is show the story, not tell it. It's very cinematic. It begins in chapter 1 in what I call the Red Wedding chapter, in homage again to the Game of Thrones. It's very interesting because the book starts on January 15th, 2020, in the East Wing of the White House. President Trump is literally at the top of his game. We've got the strongest economy in modern history, real wages going up for blue collar and black and brown Americans. We've got the missiles grounded in North Korea. We've got an uneasy peace with Iran. We're cracking down on communist China. We've got a secure southern border, and all seems quiet on the Western Front in Trump land. Yet, as I sit in that audience that day in the East Wing, I'm the only one in that audience who is literally in a cold sweat. And I'm in a cold sweat because 14 years earlier, in a previous book on China, the one, by the way, President Trump read that began our relationship, I had predicted that communist China would create a global pandemic from a virus that would kill millions. I mean, just think about that for a minute. So I'm sitting there with that knowledge. I've been watching the cable traffic that I have access to as a White House official. I'm looking at the smoke coming out of the crematory in Wuhan. And I knew right then in my bones that we were in for a potentially very tough pandemic time. And as I sat there on the stage was President Trump with Vice Premier Liu Ha to sign this, what was called the skinny trade deal It was a big disappointment to me. I would hide that disappointment out of loyalty. But I'm sitting there watching this unfold, and I'm thinking the following. It's like, what do these Chinese communists know as they sit there about the virus that they aren't telling us? First of all. Second of all, why could it be possible that they are infected with the Wuhan virus? And if so, why did they shake my hand last night at the trade dinner with them? And why are they sitting so close to the American president and vice president? But most of all, what I was thinking, knowing communist China so well as I do, could this be a bioweapon designed to take down the only president in modern American history that had actually stood up to communist China, dating back to the days of Nixon and Eisenhower? And in Trump Time book, takes off from there. I think I make the strong case that yes, whether this thing escaped or was intentionally released from the Wuhan lab, by the way, which is behind me, China did commit what I call in the Trump Time book 5 heinous acts that ensured the pandemic, and this was a tantamount to an attack on America. And then from that Red Wedding chapter, we go immediately into chapter 2, where I meet a man who I believe is a narcissist, a sociopath, and truly evil. That would be Fauci. It's an interesting chapter because the president has dispatched me to the Situation Room, the iconic Situation Room, to argue the case to the task force on the virus that we should take down flights from communist China. And remember, this was very early in the pandemic. The boss was seeing the chessboard clearly. There were only 3 people in the White House taking the virus seriously. It was him, me, and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. He makes the prescient decision to do that. It would turn out to be a courageous decision that would save millions of lives. But I walk into the sit room that day, and I got nothing but enemies, right? There's 4 people I see. I know I'm going to get in an argument with. It's Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff, Azar, and Health and Human Services. I got one of Mike Pompeo's hacks from the State Department on my left shoulder. I've got the Orville, I call him the Orville Redenbacher doppelganger in the book. You know who that is. It's Dr. Redfield, the bumbling director of the CDC, who would screw up the testing problem so drastically. But across the way, there's this little guy with little round glasses. Look at him. He didn't know he was a saint, didn't know he walked on water. And immediately I get into an argument with him. He keeps saying over and over again, like Flaubert's parrot, it's like travel bans don't work. And I'm thinking to myself, like Bush the Sundance, like, who is this guy? Right. Finally, I say to him, dude, I actually said to him, dude, it's like, you mean to tell me if there's like 20,000 Chinese nationals coming in every day to Kennedy, O'Hare, and LAX, some of them from Wuhan, some of them lit up like a Christmas tree with virus. You're telling me that we should allow them in? I mean, who are you? Right. And that would be by the beginning of my relationship with Fauci. But let me tell you this, that the big thing that day was not that. It was the fact that, following me on this, Fauci knew the following. This is the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Fauci knew, number one, that the virus came from Wuhan. Everybody knew that. Fauci, number 2, knew that the virus popped up literally within yards of this building. And here's what Fauci knew, but nobody else did in America at the time. Fauci had funded what's called gain of function experiments at this lab. This is a technology that can turn a harmless bat virus into a human killer. And Fauci had been told by a prominent scientist who had looked at the virus that there was the high likelihood that it was genetically engineered. So this house that Fauci built, literally, here's the thing. I mean, the interim time makes this case. You tell me, it's like, if I knew this thing was likely from the lab and was going to cause a pandemic, certainly Fauci knew that the source of that was likely the Wuhan bioweapons lab, and Fauci was in all probability a contributor to the spawning of the pandemic. The lie of omission that Fauci tells at this time is not to tell the president about any of this, not to tell the task force, not to tell me. If he had done that, we would have had a completely different strategy and we could have saved millions of lives. And so that's the beginning of the book. It just takes off from there. Fauci belongs in an orange jumpsuit. China owes us reparations. And I'm going to turn now to Erica because it's going to be much more fun now to listen to your questions and try to answer them. So I'll kick it over to Erica and let's see what you got.
Yeah, okay. So the first question comes from Adam in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He says, "Dear Peter, could you help me explain the entanglement and relationship between the CCP and various global organizations? Which of them has more power and is the largest threat to the United States?"
Well, I think at least within the context of the In Trump Time book, the biggest organization that caused the world the most trouble was the World Health Organization. And as I document in the book, the relationship is this. It's there's a guy named Tedros who runs the WHO. He's an Ethiopian. And what communist China does as a matter of geopolitical strategy is they engage in what's called debt diplomacy, which is to say they go into every country in Africa, including Ethiopia, all across Latin America, and basically dangle huge amounts of money to the leaders of those countries in exchange for access to their markets and access to their ports. And before you know it, a country is up to its ears in debt and beholden to China. So what the World Health Organization did within the context of the paradigm was two things. One, it denied there was any human-to-human transmission, which followed the Chinese Communist Party line, when in fact we knew that that was a flat-out lie. And secondly, it's like I said this was a pandemic in the end of January. I mean, I have a memo. It was a very historic memo that I wrote following that meeting in the Situation Room, where I described this thing as a possible pandemic, whereas it would take the World Health Organization and Tedros until March in order to officially brand it the pandemic. So bottom line is China controls far too many of these international organizations. They take advantage of the United States, and in this case, they killed people.
And a lot of people went crazy when we pulled out.
Yes. Well, the whole point of the threat there was to get Tedros out and get some leadership that would not be beholden to the Chinese communists. But Tedros is still there, and the WHO. The other thing the WHO did, Erica and audience, was maintain this fiction of the nature origin of the virus. Remember, Fauci was responsible for this virus coming out of this lab. But one of the things Fauci did was double down by getting this character, Peter Daszak, who's in the book. I see him as arguably the dumbest guy who ever tried to play God. Daszak conducted a letter campaign to basically propagate the Chinese myth that would help Fauci evade his responsibility that this thing was from nature. And he's been outed on that by now as well.
Yeah, that came out in the last couple of weeks too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the next one we have is from Nicole. She's from Quebec, Canada. What will the subject of your next book be? Any chance it could be about big pharma?
Oh, you don't have to wait to my next book. There's a whole chapter in the In Trump Time book. I'm into homages. You may notice Defoe, whatever, but the chapter in this question is an homage to Perry Mason. It's the curious case of the delayed vaccine. And what I illustrate in this particular chapter is how, on the one hand, Donald Trump got the vaccine in Trump time, literally in 1/3 of the time it takes to develop a vaccine. But as we were getting ready to be able to provide that to the American people, Fauci and Big Pharma in particular, along with the FDA and the Democrat Party, conspired to delay that vaccine. And Big Pharma plays a big role in this book, as well as in the fact that Donald Trump's not in the White House. I describe Pfizer in particular as the executives of Pfizer as people who would come into the White House. They would look down their noses at me as some kind of nativist because I wanted to have our supply chains and production on American soil. And Pfizer, even though it's based in New York, is that kind of multinational corporation that views itself as a nation state. It views itself as the Vatican, and its purpose is not to promote the interests of America or serve the American people. It's simply to make money. And so it juggles interests. And Big Pharma really spent a lot of money and time trying to take out President Trump with advertising campaigns. But Bourla, the CEO, and Pfizer really bear a tremendous responsibility in costing American lives through their shenanigans on the vaccine. Okay, Erica, back to you. What else we got?
They've made a lot of money this year. So we've got one from Bobby. He's from Hamlet, North Carolina. If you were in power, what steps would you take to stop stagflation?
It's all in the epilogue to the book. I lay out my manifesto. Stagflation, for everyone else listening, viewing here, is a combination, a toxic combination of slow growth or recession, that's the stag part, with inflation. And as we face this supply chain crisis we have now and the shocks, the cost push inflation shocks from the pandemic itself, the most important thing we have to focus on is reshoring our factories and our supply chains here, not just to make them more resilient, but also to provide the kind of high-paying manufacturing blue-collar jobs that we're going to need to basically provide prosperity to the American people. The other thing, I mean, look, when I was with President Trump, we were adamant about energy independence, for example, for the American people. That's not just for national security reasons, but when you have cheap oil and natural gas and gasoline at the pump, your businesses are more competitive and people have more money in their pocket to spend on other goods that can help drive the economy. So when you ask me, you know, what do we do to control inflation? It's like, let's have energy independence again, like under Trump, and let's have our factories here, which boost productivity and wages and press down inflation. What else you got, Erica?
All right, we've got one from Charlene from Albuquerque. Dr. Navarro, tell me what events lead you to being picked to being on Trump's cabinet. And thank you to your service, or thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you. And I was what's called an assistant to the president. That's the highest ranking office inside the White House. It's separate from the cabinet itself, the cabinet secretaries. And it was a natural, organic process moving from top trade and economic advisor on the campaign into the White House, into a top policy position there. The way I originally met the president was through some smart ass reporter in 2011 who asked the president what his favorite books on China were, thinking that he'd get kind of the Sarah Palin kind of, oh, I like them all. And the boss proceeded to reel out 10 straight books, title, author, and why he liked them. And I was number 6 on the list with the coming China wars. And I began a correspondence with him at that point through Rona Graff, his administrative assistant. So when he announced for president, I quickly sent him a note, anything you need, boss. And here I am now. Next one you got, Erica.
All right, we've got one from Robert from Wilmington, Delaware. Oh, this is good. We love you on the War Room with Steve.
Yes.
I tell everyone to listen to you and Cortez when you and Cortez are on. I'm curious to know how Steve and yourself and others line up so many awesome speakers for the War Room. Who schedules and manages all of that? You guys make it look so easy, but I know that lining up the schedules is about as easy as Congress balancing the federal budget.
Well, Steve's got a great staff, but Steve also does a lot of that himself. When I guest host, I'll make some suggestions as well. But the thing I love about Bannon's War Room is it's not starstruck. He doesn't bring in the usual suspects you see on the cable news networks and just recycle them over and over again. He calls upon real people doing real actions out in the community. The Virginia case, I think, was a beautiful thing. There was one woman who came on, a mother who was taking on the school boards on critical race theory, mask mandates, and the like. And she was better than anything you could imagine. Just articulate, smart, tough. And thanks for watching the War Room. Erica, what else you got?
Yeah, well, I think we saw in Virginia, the parents are not dealing with that. So we've got Nathan from Gig Harbor. How difficult would it be to dismantle or abolish the Department of Education, or to reorganize or clean out something as entrenched as the DOJ? He hopes to meet you someday.
Well, let's talk about the Department of Justice, because there's a chapter in the In Trump Time book that really lays out Bill Barr. I mean, one of the problems that I identify in this book, there's an old saw personnel as policy from the Reagan era. I refine that into bad personnel is bad policy, is bad politics. And I myself really scratched my head when the boss appointed Bill Barr, very traditional Bush era Republican. I thought that would be a mistake. When I met Bill, I was actually pleasantly surprised, and for a while things were good. I worked with Bill. He was a China hawk. We did some good things there. And when the pandemic hit, he and I worked to try to crack down on the hoarding and profiteering that was occurring. But ultimately, Barr reverted to the mean when it came, for example, to not pursuing an aggressive investigation of the Russia hoax perpetrators. But mostly what bothered me about Bill is it should have been the Department of Justice's responsibility to investigate the election fraud. He didn't do that. I called him up on his cell phone. It's all in the book. There's a conversation I had with him that you can read in there. He claimed that it was the Trump campaign's job to do it, not his. But just merely a few days later, he said that they had investigated and found no irregularities. And that was just a flat out lie by Bill Barr. And I lay him out for that. So, I mean, the big takeaway here to your question is that bad personnel is bad policy. Get the right people in there. And I hope every president-elect going forward reads In Trump Time before they assemble their cabinet and administration. Back to you, Erica.
Well, did you see the arrest that was made this morning?
No, who'd they arrest?
They arrested Danchenko, Steele's biggest informant.
Interesting. Let the games begin.
Yep. Okay, we've got one from Robert in Newport, Oregon. Here's another one. We love seeing you on War Room and trust that in another Trump administration, you'll be serving again. Has President Trump endorsed or promoted your book? And if not, can you say why?
We got the copies late, so I just literally sent him and Melania copies last week. And that's a story to be continued. I'd be delighted to get his endorsement, but it's a little early in the process. I'm hoping that he gets a chance to read it soon. And we'll let you know. So stay tuned.
Yes, but they should know that his voice is actually in your audiobook.
Oh, yeah. The cool thing about it, buy this as a twin. Get the hardcover, but the audiobook's fun. I'm surprised nobody ever did this. I narrated it at the request of the publisher, and that's all well and good. But the fun thing about it is that I also use the voices of people who actually appear in the book. Steve Bannon's in it. You have Victor Davis Hanson, wonderful character, Doc Hatfill, who was really important, a real hero on the pandemic. But the guy I think arguably steals the show is Corey Lewandowski in a chapter late in the book. It's on Air Force One, and he talks about how he and Dave Bossie are effectively reading the riot act to the Trump campaign team of Kushner, Stepien, and Clark, and that alone is worth the price of the audiobook. So there it is. Back to you, Erica.
Yeah. Okay, this one's from Carolyn from Selma, North Carolina. After this week's Republican wins, do you see a way for us to take control in Washington finally? And are we being vigilant about getting rid of rhinos?
Look, there's no question in my mind that the Republicans will take back the House and hold the Senate in 2022. But your question is really pertinent. There is a split between the Trump party of the working class, which supports a tough trade policy and fairness for American manufacturing workers, versus the Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, Rhino, Mitt Romney, Ben Sass wing of the Republican Party that loves to offshore our jobs on behalf of the corporate donors that keep Mitch McConnell in power. So that battle must continue. We must not only win for the Republican Party in 2022, we must purge all of these rhinos out of leadership positions. Liz Cheney's already gone, but it's time to certainly for McConnell to be put out to pasture, and Kevin McCarthy. They are toxic in terms of the Trump agenda. Next question.
Yeah. Okay, this one comes from Tracy in Canton, Georgia. Do you think the CDC will go through their Project Shielding camps they have promoted on their website for the unvaxxed?
There's a war going on right now against the unvaccinated. And in chapter 5 of the book, I talk about my particular role in the vaccine. It started on February 9th. On behalf of the president, I wrote a memo that said that if we start now, we could have a vaccine by October or November. And we hit that mark. And we hit it despite the fact that Fauci fought me all the way and insisted it would take twice the amount of time. But I said, no, Tony, we're doing it in Trump time. That's the good news. The bad news is I knew at the time, and I wrote in memos to this effect, that the vaccine would simply be part of a broader solution. We knew, and Doc Hatfield, he's just a wonderful character, a real American hero. There's a passage in the book how he talks about how viruses are clever little beasts. Their goal is not to kill everybody outright, but to spread, right? They're not like Ebola, right? So efficient virus is doing what we're seeing now. It's like spreads. And the whole point of the thing is he said flat out, it's going to mutate and then we're going to be in a war of attrition. And so the CDC and Fauci with this universal vax policy to the exclusion of therapeutics is really a bad strategy. Chapter 7 in the book is the longest chapter in the book. It's about, again, homage to Perry Mason, the scurrilous case of hydroxyhysteria. It's a story about how a drug, hydroxychloroquine, which is one of the safest, with one of the longest 60-year track record of safety, was turned into something that people feared and that the FDA wound up banning at a cost of literally hundreds of thousands of American lives. And it happened because people like Fauci and Jeff Zucker at CNN, John Berman at CNN, Sheryl Stolberg at the New York Times, They all hated Donald Trump more than they wanted to save American lives. They simply wouldn't tell the truth about a safe and effective drug. Back to you, Erica.
Okay, this one comes from Andrew from Pittsburgh. Thank you for your service. And another, I enjoy when you are on the War Room, especially discussing economics. I'm a finance major and teach high school personal finance. It's sad to see our first responders, especially cops, firemen, nurses, and doctors who were praised 12 months ago during your regime, now being forced to resign due to this unjust mandate. You and the boss would never have let this happen. You supported the true heroes. I don't know if that's a question, but
well, I look. You're absolutely right. And in the book, I not only document my role helping the boss get that vaccine going. I state unequivocally that we never imagined that this vaccine would be used as a weapon to take somebody's job or isolate them culturally and socially and politically. The tragedy here is that the Biden regime is doing just that. And look, it's bad science. I'm not anti-vax. I've worked with Dr. Robert Malone. You've seen him and me on the War Room. He's the guy that invented the RNA technology that makes these vaccinations possible. He and I both say that you should only vaccinate the most vulnerable, older folks who have a high potential for mortality rate, people with comorbidities like diabetes and lung disease, but you do not jab children. You do not jab people who've already had the virus and have 20 times the strength of antibodies as the vaccine. And you don't need to jab otherwise healthy people. Yet this universal vaccine policy do that. But even if you don't buy any of that, I can tell you as an economist, when you introduce a forced vax policy into an already severely distorted labor market, and you lose truckers, you lose longshoremen, you lose food processors at a time when we have a severe supply chain shortage. You're basically making the worst possible mistake. You're doing a policy-induced error that's really costing things. Back to you, Erica.
Well, and sadly, we started jabbing kids this week, so.
Yeah, but breaks my heart. Never would have happened during the Trump administration. Never.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one from Robert in Glendale, Missouri. Dr. Navarro, I just bought a signed copy of In Trump Time, and I look forward to your extremely informative segments on Bannon's War Room. On a recent War Room episode, I saw you wearing a Dana Point t-shirt. Are you a surfer, and have you done much surfing in the past?
I tell you that one of the things I had to give up that broke my heart was my ocean out in California. And yeah, I surf, but more often I would paddleboard. It was a real joy going out, and you could literally paddle with the dolphins out in the water. But you know, my time in the White House, I viewed as a mission. I viewed it 24/7. I viewed it as literally being on a ship at sea. And when a guy like Pete Buttigieg deserts that ship to stay at home for 2 months as the Department of Transportation Secretary in the middle of the worst supply chain crisis we've had in my memory, it's really a stark contrast to the ethic I tried to maintain when I was in the White House. But yeah, I miss Dana Point and the nice break that's down there. Erica.
Okay, we've got one from Peter in the United Kingdom. Well, no questions here, just well wishes from Blighty. May God bless Trump and God bless America and all serve her well. There's
Brexit rules, baby. All right, what else you got?
I've got one more here from Karen from Chattanooga, Tennessee. First of all, thank you for your honest and direct answers. My question is, what really inspired you to raise the flag high, which brought many into the fight to help rid this planet of these lying, devilish, well, it got cut off, but I think we can all finish that sentence.
You know, I've for whatever reason, I think it's kind of I grew up poor in a single family household. I watched my mom work 12 hours a day for paychecks that at the time were less than $100 a week. Um, we struggled. We didn't endure the kind of poverty that some people endure today, but I think it instilled in me an important ethic and empathy with blue collar America. And if you simply look at my resume, it's always been directed towards public service. And for me, everything I did prior to the White House, I think was in many ways a preparation for that, whether it was my academic training or going in the Peace Corps or whatever. It was simply an honor to serve. To close this out, and I think we're right on time here, to close this out, Erica and folks watching, this book was a labor of love for me. It's a historical document. It's designed to accurately record what happened in the Trump White House, and it's being thrown into a sea of other books that effectively are lies, propaganda, anonymously sourced spin and narrative. And it means a lot to me that you're here because these other books are being heavily promoted by the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, all the corporate media out there that promote the lies of the likes of Woodward, who I expose as a liar in this book. And it means a lot to me for you to be watching this today and buying the book. So we'll leave it at that. I want to thank Erica for doing a great job with the questions, and Premier for hosting this. And perhaps we'll see you again. And I'm over and out. I'll turn it back to mission control at Premier.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.